The Awakening. The Karathi Dominion had ruled 3 spiral arms of the galaxy for 10,000 years. Their weapon of choice wasn't lasers or antimatter bombs, but something far more terrifying: pure weaponized chaos. They called it the entropy cascade, a technology that could unravel the fundamental order of reality itself. When they turned their attention to the small system containing Earth, they expected another quick submission to their chaotic reign. They had no idea they were about to hand humanity the keys to their own destruction. Commander Vextor stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, the Disorder's herald, watching the blue-green jewel of Earth rotate peacefully below. His forearms moved in practiced synchronization as he prepared the entropy cascade generators. The Karathi were beings of pure order, ironically enough, their crystalline bodies humming with mathematical precision. They wielded chaos like a surgeon wielded a scalpel, carefully, precisely, never letting it touch them directly. The first strike hit the Mars colony at 800 Earth Standard Time. Reality itself seemed to hiccup. Buildings didn't just collapse. They forgot how to be buildings. The carefully maintained atmosphere didn't leak away. It decided it wanted to be soup. The colonists didn't die, that would have been merciful. Instead, they found themselves existing in multiple states simultaneously, their consciousness scattered across probability clouds. The distress signal that reached Earth wasn't a transmission in any conventional sense. It was more like reality screaming. President Maria Santos stood in the emergency bunker beneath Geneva, watching the impossible footage from Mars. Her military advisors were pale. Several had been physically sick after witnessing what chaos could do to human physiology. General Chen was the first to speak after the horrifying silence. "Madam President, we have no defense against this. Our weapons, our shields, everything we have depends on physics working properly. They're literally weaponizing the breakdown of natural law." Santos nodded slowly, her mind racing. Humanity had faced existential threats before: climate change, nuclear war, asteroid impacts. But this was different. This wasn't destruction. It was uncreation. But as she looked around the room at Earth's brightest minds, she saw something the Karathi couldn't have predicted. She didn't see fear. She saw curiosity. Dr. James Wright, head of the Theoretical Physics Division, was actually smiling. It wasn't a happy smile. His colleagues on Mars were gone. But it was the smile of someone who had just seen something impossible and immediately wanted to take it apart to see how it worked. "Madam President," Wright said, pulling up holographic displays that showed the chaos readings from Mars. "This is fascinating. They're not destroying the laws of physics. They're temporarily rewriting them. It's like, imagine reality is a computer program and they're injecting code that makes everything run differently." "Can we stop it?" Santos asked. "Stop it? No, but..." Wright's smile grew wider. "We might be able to play with it." The room erupted in discussion. Within hours, humanity's greatest scientific minds had converged virtually from across the planet. The Karathi, monitoring Earth's communications, expected panic, desperation, perhaps attempts at negotiation. What they got instead was excitement. The first breakthrough came from, of all places, a group of video game designers in Tokyo. They had been working on procedural generation algorithms, systems that created random but meaningful patterns. When they saw the chaos patterns from Mars, they recognized something familiar. "It's not random," Yuki Tanaka explained to the Emergency Council. "It follows rules, just not our rules. And if it follows rules, we can learn them. We can use them." The Karathi sent their demands 2 days after Mars fell. Commander Vextor appeared on every screen on Earth simultaneously, his crystalline form radiating authority. "People of Earth, you have witnessed our power. Submit to the Dominion, and you will be allowed to serve. Resist and we will unravel your world thread by thread." President Santos responded personally, and her response was broadcast not just to the Karathi, but to every human on Earth and in the surviving colonies. "Commander Vextor, humanity has a saying: necessity is the mother of invention. You've just given us the ultimate necessity. We decline your offer of servitude." The Earth's response confused the Karathi. Where was the fear? The desperation? Instead, they detected massive energy signatures across the planet. Not weapons charging, but experiments beginning. In a bunker beneath Moscow, Russian scientists were exposing volunteers to microdoses of chaos radiation. Carefully collected from the edge of the Mars disaster zone, they discovered something remarkable: Human neural plasticity allowed for adaptation to chaos states. Where other species' consciousness shattered, humans could learn to navigate the probability streams. In New York, a think tank of philosophers and physicists were working on something they called creative chaos theory. If the Karathi used chaos as a weapon of destruction, could humanity use it as a tool of creation? The first test was simple. A chaos field generator built from salvaged Karathi probe parts, used to transform a block of steel into something else. The scientists expected failure or possibly an explosion. What they got was art. The steel became a constantly shifting sculpture, beautiful and impossible, existing in multiple states that somehow harmonized. The Karathi attacked again 2 weeks later, this time targeting the Luna City moon base. Commander Vexator watched with satisfaction as the entropy cascade engulfed the human settlement. But something was wrong. The base wasn't dissolving into chaos. It was changing, adapting. The humans inside weren't fleeing in terror. They were taking notes. Lieutenant Sarah Kim was the first human to successfully navigate a chaos storm. As reality bent around her, instead of resisting or surrendering, she did something uniquely human. She improvised. When gravity forgot which way was down, she decided that every way was up. When time began flowing backward in her left hand and forward in her right, she used it to see both past and future simultaneously. When the corridor she was in decided it was actually a garden, she picked flowers that shouldn't exist and found they could cure diseases that hadn't been invented yet. "Sir?" Vextor's second-in-command chittered nervously. "The humans aren't dying. They're adapting." "Impossible," Vextor declared, but his certainty was shaken. "No species can adapt to pure chaos. It's antithetical to life itself." But humans weren't just any species. They were the species that had looked at wolves and decided to make them friends. They had taken lightning from the sky and put it in wires. They had split atoms and gone to space on controlled explosions. Chaos wasn't their enemy. It was just another frontier to explore. The creative revolution, the transformation of humanity, began not with a battle cry but with a child's laughter. 8-year-old Tommy Chen was playing in a chaos field when he discovered he could make his imaginary friends real, temporarily. His parents, both scientists, immediately recognized the implications. If chaos could make imagination tangible even briefly, then humanity had just found its weapon. Within 6 months, Earth had established the Chaos Corps, volunteers who had undergone extensive training in what they called reality surfing. These weren't soldiers in any traditional sense. They were artists, musicians, gamers, writers, people whose minds were already comfortable with creating something from nothing. Captain Marcus Williams led the first Chaos Corps unit into battle at Jupiter Station. The Karathi had established a forward base there, preparing for their final assault on Earth. As the Disorder's Herald moved into position, its entropy cascade generators charging, Williams and his team did something unprecedented. They flew directly into the chaos storm. Commander Vextor watched in disbelief as the human ships didn't dissolve. They transformed. One became a dragon of living metal, breathing fire that burned in vacuum. Another split into 1,000 butterflies, each carrying antimatter stings. William's own ship became something that hurt to perceive. A vessel that existed in all possible states simultaneously, firing weapons that hadn't been invented yet at targets that were about to exist. "They're not fighting the chaos," his science officer reported, voice trembling. "They're conducting it, like a symphony." That was exactly what Williams was doing. Each member of his team was playing their part in a composition of controlled impossibility. Where the Karathi used chaos like a sledgehammer, humans used it like a paintbrush. They weren't trying to destroy, they were creating, and their creations were magnificent and terrible. The battle lasted 3 hours in normal time, 6 days in subjective time, and both forever and never in chaos time. When it ended, Jupiter Station stood transformed. What had been a Karathi fortress was now a monument to human creativity, a structure that existed in 17 dimensions, defended by probability shields and guardian thoughts made manifest. The news of Jupiter's liberation spread across the galaxy faster than light, which was impossible. But chaos cared little for impossibility. Other species who had suffered under Karathi dominion watched in amazement as humanity did something no one had attempted before. They made chaos fun. Dr. Wright, now head of the Chaos Research Division, explained it to a gathering of alien ambassadors who had come to witness humanity's transformation. The Karathi's mistake was thinking chaos was purely destructive. But chaos is just change without predetermined patterns. And humans? We've been dealing with that our entire existence. We call it creativity. The demonstrations were beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Humans showed how chaos could be used to terraform dead worlds in minutes instead of centuries. They created art that existed in multiple dimensions, music that could be seen and touched, stories that viewers could live through. They even developed chaos medicine, treatments that convinced cancer cells they had never existed, healing that worked by making the body remember a state of perfect health that it had never actually achieved. Commander Vextor requested a meeting with President Santos. For the first time in Karathi history, they were seeking terms, not of surrender but of understanding. The crystalline being stood before the human leader, his perfect form trembling with what might have been fear or awe. "How?" he asked simply. "How do you embrace what should destroy you?" Santos smiled, a very human expression that the universal translator couldn't quite convey. "Commander, you use chaos as a weapon because you fear it. You're beings of perfect order, so chaos is your antithesis. But humans? We're already chaotic. Our thoughts jump randomly, our dreams make no sense, our emotions can shift in seconds. We don't just tolerate chaos, we thrive in it." She gestured to a window showing Earth, where reality storms now danced harmlessly in the upper atmosphere, harvested for energy and inspiration. "You gave us chaos and expected us to break. Instead, we learned to dance with it. Your weapon became our playground. The treaty negotiations were unlike any in galactic history. Humans didn't demand reparations or territory. Instead, they offered to teach. The Chaos Academy was established on the rebuilt Jupiter station, where species from across the galaxy came to learn how to work with chaos rather than against it. The Karathi became humanity's first students and eventually their greatest allies. They learned that chaos and order weren't opposites. They were dance partners, each defining the other. Under human guidance, they developed chaos gardens where impossible plants grew, creating medicines and materials that couldn't exist under normal physics. Other species brought their own interpretations. The aquatic nebulae learned to use chaos to swim through space itself. The hive-minded collectives discovered they could use chaos to temporarily experience individuality. The ancient archivists used it to recover lost knowledge from parallel timelines. But it was humanity that remained the masters of chaos, not because they controlled it, but because they never tried to. They surfed its waves, danced with its rhythms, and painted with its impossible colors. They turned the galaxy's most feared weapon into its greatest tool for creativity and growth. 5 years after first contact with the Karathi, Earth hosted the first Chaos Festival. Beings from 100 worlds gathered to witness and participate in humanity's celebration of controlled impossibility. Reality sculptors created temporary worlds that existed for minutes or hours. Chaos musicians played symphonies that could rewrite personal histories, with consent, of course. Children of dozen species played together in probability parks where imagination became briefly real. Commander Vextor, now Ambassador Vextor, stood beside President Santos as they watched the festivities. His crystalline form had learned to shift and flow, incorporating controlled chaos into his very being, a gift from his human teachers. "Your species has given the galaxy something unprecedented," he said, his harmonic voice carrying notes of wonder. "Not just the ability to survive chaos, but to celebrate it." Santos nodded, watching a human child teaching a young Karathi how to make imagination bubbles, temporary realities where anything was possible. "We didn't defeat chaos, Ambassador. We made friends with it. That's what humans do. We take the impossible and make it ordinary. Then we take the ordinary and make it extraordinary." As the festival continued, reality rippled and danced around the celebrating crowds. Where once chaos had been a weapon of oppression, it was now a tool of expression. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest secret, that chaos wasn't the opposite of order, but the birthplace of possibility. The Karathi had unleashed chaos upon humanity, expecting to find another conquered species. Instead, they had awakened something far more powerful than any weapon: human creativity given unlimited potential. They had given humanity a reason to stop holding back, to embrace the beautiful madness that had always lived in the human spirit. And in the end, that was the most human response of all. Faced with the impossible, humanity had smiled and asked, "What can we make with this?" The answer, as the galaxy was learning, was absolutely anything.